Hi readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. And if you're new to this channel, thank you for watching today. Thank you if you subscribed. I really appreciate all of you. I don't know how you found me, but I'm happy that you did, and I'm happy that you're here. Today, let's talk about what I read in the month of April. April. But caveat, I can't talk about 3 of these books because they are part of the BookTube prize, so I can't tell you how I felt about them or how I rated them until the end of May. So just be patient with me, but I will set them up briefly and not tell you anything about how I've felt about them. No ratings on Goodreads, no ratings on Storygraph, just read. All right, so let's get started. All right, in the month of April, I read 2,524 pages. The books that I rated in Storygraph, which again are not the BookTube prize books, one of the highest categories is emotional, followed by dark and reflective. Then I had next on the list was mysterious, then tense, then sad and funny. Isn't that interesting? Sad and funny were about the same in terms of my percentages, and most of them were medium paced. 83% of what I read was medium paced, followed by 17%, which I felt was fast paced. So we'll talk about that a little bit. In terms of page numbers, I had 17% of mine were 500 plus pages, and 83% were 300 to 499 pages. I read all fiction in the month of April. There was no room for nonfiction for me, apparently, but that should be different in the month of May, I think. But then again, I don't know. It's been a lot. I have a buddy read starting today. I have BookTube prize. I have some books I'm already in the middle of that I want to finish. Like, it's all the books, all the problems, all the joy, right? There's no problem here. The categories that I read the most of this time tied between thriller and literary. So there is something to be said for that, because I will say that when I was done with some of the literary reads, I went to a thriller just to kind of cleanse my palate, which I have said to you before is a nice way for me to do that. And there was one that I really wanted to finish. So also historical, LGBTQIA plus representation in one of them, horror for one of them, which maybe not horror, but since that's the category, it's maybe more paranormal, and contemporary for one. I read mostly print. 67% of the books I read were in print, with 17% digital and 17% audio. The average rating of all the books I read, all 6 of them this month, was 3.0. So my pages in April were the highest toward the first part of the month, and I'll sort of tell you why that's true in a minute. And then I didn't read a lot on day 12. I don't know what happened to me on day 12, but I didn't read. And then it spiked again a little bit toward the end of the month, but it was pretty even, my reading pace. So let's start with what I read first, which was Murder Road by Simone St. James. I picked this one up first because I had already planned to start it in this month. I gotten it from Book of the Month the month before, and I was just really anticipating this. I think I've read everything, maybe except for one book that Simone St. James has written. And this one was on my highly anticipated reads list because it is a nighttime couple in a car on a deserted highway, familiar trope. I have enjoyed several in this kind of trope, and Survive the Night by Riley Sager was one I really enjoyed that a lot of people really didn't, but I did, and this one, and I'm sure I could think of others. Maybe I'll do a concept video about that, but not today. Murder Road is about a couple who recently got married, and they are traveling to their honeymoon destination and very excited and very thrilled to be together. And they discover a truck first that they see kind of coming up behind them in a rather fast-paced way. And then they also see a woman on the side of the road that looks as though something terrible has happened to her. So they stop and pick her up, and they take her to the hospital, and some things occur that are really unexpected. This one does have a paranormal twist. So this is the one, I guess, that would have been referred to as horror in my stats. But it is both a mixture of character development, understanding who these people really are, what their experiences have been, which I really appreciated. Some of that was very important to the plot. There were a number of characters in this book, some that I didn't expect I would like as much as I ended up liking. It flowed very well. It was paced very well. I truly enjoyed it a lot. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. I don't think I rated it yet on Storygraph. I was sort of in between 4 and 4.5. So I guess as I'm saying this to you now, it was probably more of a 4.5 read for me. And it was set in the 90s, July 1995, which I like. I appreciate books set in the 90s, and I don't think I get as many of those lately. So that's really nice. All right, Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth is the second novel I've read by this author, and this was a NetGalley arc. So whoop, whoop, I finished a NetGalley arc. I reviewed it, rated it. I can check it off the list. And I was wanting to read this in April because it came out April 23rd. So it is released now to the public. And so I'm happy that I got it read before it was released to the public. I don't think I've done that for a long time. This is set in Australia, which I think a lot of Sally Hepworth's novels are. I'm thinking all of them are, but I could be wrong about that because again, this is just my second. It follows Jessica, Nora, and Alicia, and they are sisters by virtue of the fact that they all were raised by Miss Fairchild, who was a foster mom in this sort of remote community. She started with Jessica, as I believe I remember right. And then, of course, the rest of the girls came, the other 2 girls came later, and some other children came as well. But they quickly become aware when they're in the care of Miss Fairchild that she's not what she appears to be with the folks that are placing them in this setting with Miss Fairchild. So there are some sensitivity warnings here for foster care and a number of other things that you can imagine might go along with foster care, that this content is rather sensitive and a bit grim. They rely on caring for each other in many cases, and some other children, babies, come into the home and they are caring for the babies as well. They finally find freedom from her later in life, but then in the current present day setting, they discover a dead body. The remains of a dead body are buried near where they were raised, and the police reach out to them to see if they can help them with the investigation to discover what happened. So I knew going into this book that it would be really dark and emotional, and that it would remind me of, other foster care situations that I was connected to. But again, sensitivity warnings, depression, violence, addiction, suicidal thoughts, mental health disorders, trauma, everything you can imagine is packed in this book. The pace for me was medium. It was fast at times, and then it would slow down a little bit. And so I wasn't quite always invested in it when it was slower. I did, though, feel like the characters were very, very well developed, and I liked the setting, that it was in a country that I don't typically read a lot of novels that are set in that particular area. It was pretty isolated in terms of a mystery in many ways, because for most of the book, you're following their experiences living with Miss Fairchild and living in that little community. I do think that Sally Hepworth did a great job of depicting the effects and the trauma of child abuse and the long-term effects as adults. I think she really did weave a lot of that in and did that very, very well. She clearly had done her research on, foster care systems and those kinds of things. I just felt like I wanted more, and I'm not sure what more would have been. Maybe I wanted more of the mystery rather than the experience that they had in care. That might be it, but I don't know. It was a good book. I recommend it. 3 stars is a good rating. I'm glad that I did read it, and I'm grateful to NetGalley for sending me and approving me that arc. Okay, then I read The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese or Verghese. I'm not sure. I think I've heard it both ways. This is one of the books I had to read for the BookTube prize. As I've said before, but I will say maybe in every video from now on, 724 pages. I thought it was 44. There was maybe another 20 with the acknowledgments and the information about the book. But this one is set in South India, and it follows a family and some other people that are in the mix of this family's experiences over a period of time from 1900 to the 1977. That's all I'm going to tell you about it, but it is a really long book. So if you're going to read it, you want to be invested. And it was one of Oprah's picks for her book club, and Barack Obama chose it as one of his favorite top 10 books in this year. The Rachel Incident by Caroline Donahue is about a woman named Rachel and how she is developing herself as a young woman, and her story in a trajectory of maybe about, I would say, maybe 5 years, 7 years. I don't know. It does kind of go back and forth too, from Rachel's present to looking at her past. She does end up rooming with a guy named James, and that's kind of how this starts off. You can read the synopsis for a little bit more information, but again, I'm really careful about how much I give you and how much I set this up, because I just want to honor the BookTube Prize rules. And this one is set in Ireland. And again, I've had a lot of those lately. So I really had kind of a worldly experience this month, which Storygraph didn't ask me about. All three of these BookTube Prize authors were new to me, so that was a nice thing. And I was really grateful that I read all three of these books. I will say that. Okay, the other book is Absolution by Alice McDermott. So this was the third one of my BookTube Prize books. This one is set in Vietnam and Saigon. It features American wives who have moved there with their husbands, who took a position either through their government job or some other offering that they have in terms of being able to support the country as the war begins. Women in this period of time were treated very differently. They had different ways of being in their marriages, and so some of these women bonded together, as women often do when they are isolated like that in a community, especially in that day and age. So this is the story of primarily two of those women, Charlene and Trisha. And then the last book I read was The Last Party by Claire McIntosh, which is the first. I just said this because I hauled it, so forgive me if you watched the haul. The first in the D.C. Morgan series. This one is set in Wales around a river where the affluent live on one side and the not so affluent live on the other. And there is a murder and a dead body found on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And the D.C. Morgan, Fionn, and her counterpart from England, so she's from the Wales side, her detective counterpart from England, Leo Brady, work together to try to solve this mystery. Lots of secrets, lots of characters, a little bit hard to follow them sometimes, but I really did enjoy it, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. And I do want to get to Game of Lies, which is the second in this series, as quickly as I can. So that is it. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for joining me. Again, I love your comments. Let me know if you've read any of these or if they are on your list. You feel free to tell me how you felt about all of them, because you're able to do that unless you're judging in the BookTube Prize. And as always, happy reading. Bye.